Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast where a behavioral scientist examines what it's like to live a humorous life. Glimpse into the lives of the funniest people in entertainment, business, and science as your host, Dr. Peter McGraw, explores their habits, motivations, and secrets to success. Get ready to fire up your brain and your funny bone. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast that looks at the lives of funny people. I'm Peter McGraw. Today's guest is Chuck Roy. Chuck is a bear of a comedian. He's appeared on the Ralphie May Filthy Animal Tour and Louis Anderson Presents. In the late 1990s, he achieved unexpected Hollywood success with an appearance on Will and Grace. Chuck teaches comedy at the Community College of Denver and privately through comedy101.chuckroy.com, an online school for stand-up comedy. And he has the ambitious goal to change the world with laughter. Welcome, Chuck.
Yay. Hi. Thank you. That's so nice.
Well, they're all true words.
Right. Well, yes. I'm very familiar with your work. Honored to meet and hang out with you. Chat.
Yeah, it's fun.
This is really cool.
I've seen you on stage. We haven't spent much time chatting, though.
Okay.
Before we get into it, though, I want to ask you, if you weren't working as a comedian or as an instructor of comedians,
wow, yeah.
What would you be doing?
I'd be in the Senate.
Which one? The state Senate or the
federal, of course.
Federal.
I probably would have swung the bat already at running for president, elbow deep in presidential politics.
Are you really?
As a Republican, a gay Republican, which is, you can imagine, it's always been difficult. It's just extremely difficult now, and I'm really glad I made life choices to get out of that world.
Okay. You have a joke about you and 26 gay Republicans.
Yeah, it's
the phone tree.
Yeah, that came from Ralphie May Filthy Animal Tour and playing down in Denver. I had a boyfriend who got his first real job and started paying his first real taxes. And I came home one day and he's like, "Babe, what are taxes?" And that's when I got to know another gay Republican. I would do that joke here in Denver, and folks would, there would always be some people upset over the fact that I'm a gay Republican. And so I would tease them about being from Boulder and that their liberal people are very closed-minded. They want you to be open-minded as long as you agree with them. And
which that line gets, that's probably the biggest laugh line of the joke.
Yeah, I'm glad it's personally true. If there are people who are offended, I mean offense at the, like, comedically and with all sense of humor. It's a piece of my life. Before I came out of the closet, I was working for a congressman I was part of his political action committee in New Hampshire, where it's presidential politics, elbow deep. And I was coming out of the closet and really had to make life choices about, I was flunking out of school. I was drinking. I was very, scared of what life meant. And I realized it doesn't change me that much. And I knew it didn't change my politics much from where they were. I'm just a person who believes in equal rights. I know that's weird to hear out of a Republican, but it's not in my history. There are plenty of Republicans who believed in equality.
Like Lincoln, for example.
It's the one
big one.
Yeah, everybody really hates that one, But even, Goldwater, and certainly Reagan failed in that area for an actor. He really could have done a lot better. But if you're a gay person in Eastern Europe, like if you live in East Germany and fly a pride flag, that is a freedom you were not allowed when I was a kid. So, the world really has changed a lot. My politics haven't changed that much. And to move into the world of comedy, I certainly met a lot of people who tried to convince me, I was otherwise. Like, people tried to convince me not to be gay on stage. Others, said, "You do whatever you want, but this Republican thing is out of control." And, others would be like, "Don't live in New Hampshire. You have to move to Boston." I grew up near Robert Frost Farm. The road less traveled is the one I've been on for a long time. And I really like it. It leads me to places like this. And I'm, one to kind of stick to my guns. I certainly know how to change my mind. I voted Obama. I hope that calms the liberal half of the audience down, like, a lot. And I like to bring that kind of stuff to the stage. it wasn't easy. And it's been a long process of learning how to talk about the real me, which is generally and often unacceptable to polite society. And to polite society, I'm like, generally we're in a bar room and I'm telling, dick jokes. So I don't know what you're all so upset about. This isn't a mega church, and
this is one of many reasons why I wanted you to be on. I want to get elbow deep. You said that twice now.
It's a Jimmy Dunn expression. He wrote a lot of my jokes when I was a kid. He was a very big influence.
Jimmy Dunn?
He's a super comedian out of New England, Boston, New Hampshire, one of 10 other New Hampshire comedians. And
is it a surgery? Is it
elbow deep? You get elbow deep into a box of Cocoa Puffs is his line. And it just means your hand is all the way into the box.
Okay.
And,
I was
so you go elbow deep on an issue means like I'm getting all the way down to the bottom of the box.
That's interesting. It's better than balls deep, which you don't want to say in polite company.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if this is eventually broadcast on a radio station. There are sensitive people listening, and there's people who love comedy and they're very fun, and there's probably also academics listening, and
I think you're giving me too much credit for my audience.
I'm not sure who they could be. You come up when researching comedy.
Yes.
You're one of the top things that people find, your academic articles and such. So I think I've quoted you for papers
is that right?
Research. Sure. Wow. And had to figure out how am I going to meet with this person,
And then he goes to your contact page and fills out the form.
Yeah, it was really serendipitous. I'm not a grammar teacher, so I'm not sure what that word means. Oftentimes I just guess.
So, this has an E rating. So when you interview I don't always interview comics.
Okay.
A lot of my guests are comics because they meet the criteria of funny people.
Right.
But I have, or criterion, excuse me. But I have other funny people of different backgrounds and so on. So I have, I just had a podcast recently released with my funniest student in the London Business School Dubai program, who's
that's great.
Saudi Arabian supply chain expert. And while I was in Dubai, I also interviewed a former Black Hawk pilot instructor.
Oh, cool.
He also leans right, as you might guess.
Right.
Also.
Right.
But I want...
It's 50-50. There's a Trump sign in his yard, is what you're saying, I think.
I want people who... I want a diversity of opinions, shapes, sizes, orientations, everything. You know what I mean? To me, that's one of the goals that I have. I mean,
great.
You still have to be funny. Like, I won't compromise on funny for any other purpose. But there's no way that straight white men have funny locked up. So we know that to be the case.
Are you sure? They seem to think
listening to them, yes.
Man, I don't think, sometimes I don't think they get it, because it still goes on today. It's 2018 and a lot of writing rooms are just full of straight, white, educated,
some highly,
gotta have a degree, folks, the Harvard types. And I don't know how you sit in a room full of white, straight people and go, yeah, no problem. There was a day where I showed up at a holiday party for a corporate event, to perform, and it was for, a retail chain, and it was their district managers and such, and 100 people in the count, and there were 98 men, and 94 to 6 were white, and I brought it up. It got uncomfortable, but I wasn't going to not bring it up. And I made fun of them for it. I was like, I don't know how you walk into this room and
this is normal.
Nobody raises a flag. Nobody goes, we're definitely doing it wrong. It had to be like 2005 or 6. And you just still go like, there's an internet. You can Google. There's people of other backgrounds.
Well, and also I had actually one of my colleagues, Stephanie Johnson, on, and she's an expert in diversity and inclusion.
Oh, cool.
And the business case is clear that that's not good.
Yeah.
Like there's no way that they reflect their customers.
No.
And so that there's mistakes it's bad for business.
Yeah. For business politics, it might have been a winning attitude up until recently. Like the fact that they were stunned that I was bringing it up or mocking them, like affected their real alpha male thing, which becomes the most difficult part, like at a corporate event. They're they're all sort of in their alpha zone. And stand-up comedy is a lot about being the one alpha in the room.
Indeed.
And leading the rest of the people on a journey of laughter. So when they think they're superior to you, you've got work to do. And I don't mind like adding on to the pile. Like, okay, we're going to have to dig out of this being a bunch of white guys and them being mad at me for mentioning it. But
I actually find myself sometimes thinking, I think of comedy, I think of good comedy as an art form. And so as someone who studies comedy, I also find myself drawn into just paying attention to artists more generally. And your comment about digging yourself in is an interesting one. I was watching this documentary, It Might Get Loud.
Okay.
So it says, it's three guitarists of three different generations, Jimmy Page, The Edge, and Jack White.
Oh, wow.
And Jack White is by far the most interesting person in the documentary.
Okay.
Jimmy Page and The Edge they're great guitarists, but they're not like...
They're quiet figures.
Yeah, they're not. They're not charismatic. They're not Bono, and they're not Jimmy Page.
Yeah,
they're not
in the press.
That's right.
Often.
They're not a front man in that way. But Jack White is.
Right.
And he's also a singer too. He's got that thing. But he talks about creating challenges for himself on stage. He plays like a kind of plastic shitty guitar.
Okay.
Sometimes like one of his guitars, and he talks about like moving further away from the mic, so he has to kind of hustle over there and not plan. He doesn't even plan. He's careful about not planning jokes or things that he says, and so on, just to make the creative work more challenging and to see does more art come out of it, so to speak.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
So this is something you do on purpose.
Yeah, I think there's artistic reasons for it, and then my personal background is just 1994, I started performing comedy in 1992. By 1994, I realized I was going to talk about who I was the same way my other peers.
So you said, wait, 2 years in?
2 years in. I started at 20, so it's got to be like February of 1992 was the primary, or mid-January was the primary. So I was clerking for the congressman.
I see.
Flunked out by May of that year. Had quit politics probably by February, and end up on stage by June. I've called a comedy club, and I'm on stage by July and loving it. And it just kept really into exploring what is it, because those laughs are amazing, and I need to know more.
I need more of them.
Part of that. And how do you, these environments, the comedy clubs in Boston, there was a theater district. It was romantic. There were 5 major comedy clubs. They were closing. They were all owned by the mob. So that backstage, the environment was just exciting to a young 20-something. And then, you're on stage and creating laughter to sometimes sold out audiences, sometimes nobody. And it was just something I really wanted to chase. And I also, having those principles from politics, like I was going to stand my ground. If other people could talk about dating their girlfriend, I could talk about dating a boyfriend. And so flash forward to maybe 2012 is when I think I finally was able to first comfortably do that. You would lose audiences. So it was like, if I wanted to do that type of material, then I was also pre-selecting long before the show that there was potentially going to be an argument or a disruption, the crowd going from laughing with me to like dead silence and going, is this really happening? So I had to learn how to win over every one of those moments and keep it within my moral guidelines. I was not going to do one of those acts where a person with a stereotype goes, well, I'm a stereotype and being this stereotype is difficult. You can't believe how hard it is to be this stereotype. It's not. People have bigger challenges than I've ever had in my life. There are villages with no water since the day I was born to today. That's a tough life. Walking 3 hours to go get dirty water is really, when you keep the world in perspective, you go, okay, being a gay comedian it'll be difficult. It's not going to be easy like some of my other peers, but it'll be worthwhile, like when I conquer it artistically. And so you mentioned Ralph's movie or the one before it, Louis Anderson Presents. Those were 2 movies where I was booked specifically because they had seen me just do dating jokes without introducing the stereotype or trying to get permission from the audience to be gay. I was just trying to deliver a dating joke just like anybody else. And they were smart, they're leaders in comedy. They totally figured out what I was doing in a moment and said, we've got to put you in this movie. You got to do your jokes. And now I'm in the world of teaching. And that's something I try to teach to my our students is just, hey, you've got to be you as an artist. You've got to distinguish yourself as an artist. It's got to be funny and original and then distinguished. Your peers, you want them to be, if you're opening for a headliner, you're opening for Jim Jeffries, you want him to show up early and watch your set from a hidden spot in the back rooms not because they're worried of what you're covering or if you're going to blow them off the stage. They're going, I want to see what that bear is up to. He made me laugh before. I'm glad he's on the show again, and I need to see the new stuff because it's going to make me laugh more than others. And that's, I think, the real secret to the art of comedy. Had anyone told me that on day one, it would have cut out, a few years.
So what I heard you essentially say is kind of growing up in the world of politics.
Yep.
Which is adversarial oftentimes, especially when it comes to elections.
Yeah.
Right. So pre-election.
Yeah.
It's quite adversarial, and nowadays even post.
My God. Yeah.
Even it's not even post-election. So that idea that you are willing to potentially create an adversary in your audience, or at least come in conflict with your audience, is something you feel more comfortable probably than the average comedian, whether it being making people uncomfortable. Talking about your dating life or calling lefties close-minded.
Yeah. It's calling out those those stereotypes or those common things people think, all liberals are open-minded. Well, follow me in my life and, come to parties where I'm pushed into a corner by several people, young women holding Chardonnay and in a circle around me going, you can't be a gay Republican. And you just go like, ladies, I'm 6'3", I'm 300 pounds, but you have me cornered and I need you to be aware of that like in the spirit of trying to tell me I need to be a Democrat, you've surrounded me, you're using everything that I'm, a lot of techniques that I'm just totally against. That's why I'm not a populist. That's populism in an extreme form is people cornering somebody and going, you better believe just like us. And my audience, they don't have a politic. They might have one collectively. I've never measured it, but the sensibility is you just let people be people. Conversely, if a gay act opens for me and looks at the audience and says stuff like, oh, you're straight people, my crowd will lose their mind because they're like, do not label me. He doesn't take a label. We don't take a label. You have no idea. I learned this in a comedy club that I played for years. When the waitstaff asked me if I had noticed the swingers there that night, something had happened to them. And that's when I put together two things, that we had swingers that sat near the front row pretty routinely, and that it was common knowledge for a long time and it never came up and nobody felt the need to gossip about them. And I do not care. Like it just made me change my dating material to reach everybody. But as opposed to talking to straight people on dates and gay people on dates, you look out to the audience and you think, I can make some guesses here, but I best not try to land my guesses as true unless that's comedically where I really want to go to, or to when I'm just generally saying, I thank you for coming out here tonight, or thanking the people who do all the planning. Like, there's no need to assume a gender or the quantity of people in their date night, or even if it's a romantic date night, because sometimes just couples getting together with brother-in-laws and sisters and other friends, there's nothing romantic involved about it, but it gets set on a calendar and it's a date night, so I broadened it all the way out to there and thinking about how do I want to address the crowd, like just let them be on their night and we meet in the middle. Like I'm in the middle of my night too.
Certainly that dating status is irrelevant to their laughs in a sense.
Right. Yeah. Because
they're there for laughs primarily. When
nothing will make me stop laughing at a straight comedian who talks to the whole audience as if they're on a straight date. Like I check out. I'm like, you're like, man, it's like it ain't 96 anymore. You know, like just acknowledge that there's people of, other worlds here. And, like we bicker too over the menu, or, we get upset about parking or not, we get mad about not having a choice ever or always having to make the choice. Those are, if you take one step back and broaden your view, you can find a way to include more of the audience on your comedy, because the real source of the comedy is the frustration in parking. It's certainly not the gender or the stereotype behind it.
Yeah, I see. Everybody has the parking problem.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of things that you've already mentioned that I wanted to ask you about. So you said you're 6'3",
yes,
300 pounds,
320. You got me. I really like chocolate.
So, I said you're a bear of a comedian.
Yes.
That has multiple meanings.
Right.
So explain for people who don't. So 6'3", 320, and you've got a beard, you got a big bushy
I look
head of
like
hair.
Kenny Rogers knocked up an Oak Ridge boy. It was an old school joke of mine. I have a hoodie on that says bear in giant letters. And sometimes for an audience, if I really need to whack them over the head, I'm like, bear is a big, fat, gay guy. And I point at each of the letters and they have to figure out, like, it's classic misdirection.
Right.
Like, and I'm doing sort of, the acronym for what a bear might be. And
Yes.
so oftentimes a bear is a big, fat, gay guy. And that would definitely be me.
Okay.
And then I have a lot of empathy for people who are straight, and just like, so there are mothers who call their littlest one a bear, bear. Like, it's just, that's another place where you'll hear the term. And then big dudes that are, furry and drive trucks and live in Minnetonka can be called bear, by their wife. And that, they're just like, when people hear my material, I want them to acknowledge that, yeah, they're gay bears, but that doesn't mean everybody who is big, fat, and with a beard is a gay bear.
Right.
Like,
every big, fat,
bears.
gay man is a bear,
Potentially.
but not every big, hairy man is gay.
Yeah, my brother-in-law is Big Ray, and that's the nickname for him. But if he was like a cab driver in Buffalo, I remember having a cab driver in Buffalo named Bear.
I see.
There's a...
You guys probably own the same sweatshirt.
Right. I hope not. This one's custom, fancy.
Do you sell that? Do you sell merch that says Bear?
I have some T-shirts. I tried doing merch. There's too much with taxes, like sales taxes to you. Like, as I read it, you got to charge taxes in their town and in yours. Okay. And there was that a big Supreme Court case over the summer about it. And turns out at the level I sell, there's legally, I think, almost no reason for me to file for the two tax licenses. But
I see.
When it's Wayfair, they need to. And that now you can see the politics.
I was going to say, we're about to head into Republican
globally
talking points.
It's low taxes across the board. They need to increase my customer base, which is I have comedians from Nigeria that reach out and comedians from India that reach out. Uh-huh. But currently on my website, I'm only selling comedy classes in the States because I don't want to have to figure out international taxes.
I see.
While I try to figure out something so broad as how to teach comedy online.
To a Nigerian.
Awesome.
Yeah.
His name is Eagles Emery. And then I now have probably 20 Nigerian comedian friends who follow like my videos and such. He was following a blog I used to keep. And sometimes I would put out YouTube videos on how to write a joke. And in the cases of international students, they can translate it. They can also put closed caption in their language.
Oh, so nice.
That's, I study things like universal design. So, on campus, I'm learning how to teach comedy to a variety of learners, a variety of abilities. And when it comes to things like taxes, I'm like, that's going to take some time. Like, that's just...
it's on the back burner.
Yeah. Better to put out free content right now that international people can access and learn from than trying to worry about affordability in Nigeria. We really did the math. Like, it's $400 a year in standard of living, and So he didn't want to not pay for courses. So we figured out if he paid 75 cents, that was pretty
I see.
comparable. So,
yeah, right.
Yeah, you got to figure out like how to do a promo code for Nigerians to be able to buy at their price. And then.
So if I have any Nigerian guests, you can message me privately for those promo
I love
codes.
it. I love it. He had sent a bunch of memes that he was struggling with. He was trying to do memes like I was doing and encouraging other people to do. And so on my end, the task was determine his comedy and where it was failing. He said he was offending people too much, and he wanted to figure out how to not
too much of a violation, not benign enough.
So
yes.
There was a joke about a dad having gone off to hunt and come back with nothing, and that was making people in his neighborhood a little pissed. Like starvation is not funny to people who have friends who are starving.
I see.
And then it's also like, well, that must be right where the button must be pushed. As a proper comedian, it's like, if that's where the steam needs relieving, you got to go there.
Yes.
So
that's where the puzzle is to be solved.
Yeah. So that was, I didn't want to shy away from that. I wanted to, figure out how can I coach this guy to find the line. Well, I have to learn like his culture, and then what will his culture laugh in? I'm not trying to generate a Denver laugh. I need a Nigerian laugh.
Yeah, that's right. That's fascinating. So I had seen you perform, but the other reason why I wanted to bring you on was because I actually stumbled across one of your videos.
Oh, okay.
And I wasn't aware that you were working as an instructor, a comedy instructor.
Oh, okay.
And so I want to talk to you about, we'll get into how you got into this, but I want to talk to you about that video. So the video was about reversals.
Oh, okay, great.
Yes.
How to write comedy, I think it's called The Reverse. Over 10,000 hits now on YouTube, and it was a homework assignment for the Teaching Learning Center at the Community College of Denver. So most colleges have a teaching coaching center. There's a variety of names for it, most often something like Teaching Learning Center.
Ours is like FTAP, the Faculty Teaching Excellence Program.
Yeah.
So I've taken a bunch of these classes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the day I started teaching, Ralphie May Filthy Animal Tour came out the first day of class. I was touring and also had a Last Comic Standing audition within the first few weeks of teaching. So that's not my life normally, but I'm experienced at being on planes and bouncing from gigs to things, and so I missed my orientation because of a gig, and so I logged in at the school. If you're not in a college, then there's a system you log into, and found where my course was. Probably my third or fourth time logging in, there was this little red light. And I don't like red lights. That's not a good thing, So I'm trying to figure out how am I going to teach. And there's this light going like, you're not doing something. So I click on the red light, and I wasn't doing my homework in an effective learning course that everybody had been enrolled in.
Well, you are on brand for a comedian.
Totally where I needed to be. And even my boss said it. He's like, this is why we have you. You're really doing this. So if you have to miss an orientation to tour, we'll catch you up.
Okay.
So I check in on this online class, and it's my hero, Jen Ferguson, works for the Teaching Learning Center. And it was a course basically designed at effective teaching, but it was done in that online method. And she makes these great learning videos that are slow narrations of a PowerPoint. And I loved them. I'd come home from teaching and then have dinner and watch the video, and then get into the lesson. But while I'm having dinner and such, and I just need to decompress, watching a 5-minute or 20-minute video was just a great way to convert my head into the world of I have to take this class and do some sort of assignment. What on earth is going on? And from there, I followed her courses into one called Online Basics. And the premise of that one was how to organize your online course shell. And creating a video was the big takeaway. So I was really excited to be able to finally make a video that matches what my students in the class were learning. So I created the Comedy Reverse to match Mel Helitzer's Comedy Writing Secrets, which is our book. And it was to just be
I think I have that on my shelf somewhere.
Oh, great. Yellow with red writing. Yeah. And 3 editions. They get more academic as Helitzer, I think, is gone. And now there's some rook of a academic doing butchering it, making it more about what academics need to know about teaching or comedy. So either way, this is just supposed to be, say, at the top of a module, an overview of the chapter and a basic teaching of the lesson. And I uploaded it to YouTube. Was really excited to do that. Thought I would get 20 hits or 30 hits. Like if you take an online math class and it's a YouTube video and there you go and you see that it has 25 hits in 6 semesters, with 100 students. So nobody's watching it.
Right.
And, to know that mine are now at How to Write a Joke is at like 15 or closer to 20,000 views.
Okay.
It's telling me who the audience is.
Yes.
Once a year, I kind of look at the Google Analytics and learn a little bit more. That kind of stuff freaks me out. Like if I wanted to be popular, I'd live in Los Angeles, so I wasn't intending to create popular videos, but I did want to create quality videos that got the lesson across. And so I can see that people are rewatching certain sections and such. Last I checked, there was someone from Vietnam who had watched it 300%. So that means they've gone back and forth to watch it. And that's where I assume people are watching maybe in a closed caption in order to get English as a second language.
I see.
And comedy is just a higher level of English to try and get command of. So the comedy reverse is essentially misdirection, the switcheroo, taking a person down one path and then going to the other side. So it provides a couple of examples that are from the book and then one of my own jokes. I'm from the great state of New Hampshire. The state motto is live free or die. I chose move. And that's just, I'm taking you down one direction and then I'm pulling the reverse and going in the other way. And so that was my first attempt at learning how to organize a video. And I knew how to edit and that type of stuff, and I knew how to create a PowerPoint, but I had never considered until I saw one of those videos how effective that would be as a learning tool. And then through further study, like I brought up universal design earlier, now I know larger fonts so that people can really read them. In observing in life, you can see people watching videos on a bus. So a video that has more text to it and larger text so that people can see it from a small cell phone.
Yeah, half of it has to be on mobile these days.
Yep. And, Obama was one of the first people to really get that across in mass communication. Like you could see in his videos where keywords would come up.
Oh, I see.
And it helps in my, a lot of my current videos. I try to do more of that just because, again, I want to be effective and address the variety of learning styles out there. To me, that reminds me of like when someone explained to me what universal design was like. I remember being in an online discussion and saying, yeah, that's like working with Wanda Sykes or Tracy Morgan, Brian Regan or Kathleen Madigan. Those are levels of craziness from Wanda Sykes being probably the most rational and Madigan, then Brian is adorable and then Tracy absolutely crazy. And they're all super geniuses of comedy. They're good mentors. They know how to explain things or observe and discuss. And if we were to have them as a panel, I bet you they could spend an hour on their own learning difficulties and how they've conquered them or what professors or teachers in their life have helped them conquer, and to understand that, that's beneficial to comedy if we put stuff out there, not as a law or even as a rule, but as here's a suggestion or a potential definition of these terms and explanation. And then, the application and innovation. How do you do those steps? For teacher nerds, it's Bloom's taxonomy. It's, start with knowledge. And a lot of my newer content is built in that manner. Explain the definition and then try to get the comprehension, then the application, and then some assessment, innovation, followed by a final evaluation.
Sounds like you've thought more about this than I have. So it's interesting when Joel Warner and I worked on the Humor Code, we actually interviewed this guy out in LA, Dean, what's his first name? Not Howard Dean. That's the
Vermont governor.
Any case, I can come up with it. And it was interesting. So he does a stand-up comedy course.
Okay.
And used this linguist's model of script reversal and so on as a way to teach people how to write jokes and think about jokes and so on. And then he did we sat in one of the classes where He was teaching how to riff, how to work with an audience and talk to an audience.
Oh,
and
wow.
all those kinds of things. And it's fun. I think it's interesting that a lot of comics sort of chafe at the idea that you might take a class to learn this stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, as someone who teaches, I know that classroom experiences aren't always the best way to learn, but they can often be a useful way, at the very least, a supplementary way.
Right.
I've always believed that like the benign violation theory is not meant to be used to teach people to be funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's an explanation of what is funny,
Yeah.
but I believe that it could be used to kind of cut the learning curve in the same way that so this reversal idea is interesting because I've been writing about it.
Oh, okay, cool.
And so, I have this, I don't know if you know Valley D, but she was here from Boulder. She lives in Boston now.
Okay.
She has this great tweet. Do you ever think about how nice it would be to leave your phone at home and take a nice long walk and get run over by a car?
Classic.
Nice,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
So, solid comedy. I have another one I found from Tim Lee. Tim's a comedian, I think out in California. Says, been off caffeine for 3 months. Do I miss it? Yeah. But do I miss the nervousness, insomnia, and heart palpitations? Yeah, I do.
Ah, that's great.
Right? Those are nice.
Great.
Those are nice reversals.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is when you start looking for them in comedy,
Mm-hmm.
you find them everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like it's comedy 101.
Definitely.
In a sense, right?
It's certainly joke writing 101. And, you can extend it to in the worlds of improvisation or your act outs. There's definitely like that misdirection. It's a bride at a wedding pushing the cake into her, groom's face. Like she's supposed to feed the groom and then she's, ha ha ha. It's like, that's an old joke. I was thinking all the way back to pull my finger, it's just like what would, cave people be doing for jokes.
Yeah.
And it's, that classic misdirection of I'm sending you this way and now I'm making you something else is happening that it was unexpected.
Yeah. I like this, because you actually write down like these steps that you should follow and questions you should ask in terms of seeing if you can flip a premise, so to speak.
So those are techniques I definitely picked up from Helitzer. Like I was a kid and my friend Jimmy Dunn mentioned, like, read this book, Comedy Writing Secrets. And in the classic New England working class sense, he's like, don't tell anybody, it's a secret. And when I got the job teaching, I called him and said, hey, and I said, guess what book? And he's like, Helitzer. The times had shifted. There's no more, in this era, you just don't hide secrets anymore. And Helitzer.
If Jerry Seinfeld's going to talk to the New York Times about how he writes jokes.
Yeah,
this is not, people aren't treating comedy like magic, where magicians are still hiding.
Yeah, which is, I pity them. Like it's like, and I understand why they might want to do that, but not all of us want to see the video of how it's done. And the next best magicians, from Nigeria ought to be able to have access to a video.
I see.
One could put it that way. But with teaching comedy, that's since day one of taking the job, I was aware of the tension and the counterculture to it. I took Louis Anderson's boot camp. I was invited to attend, and there was a lot of internet brouhaha about Louis and Kyle Cease having a boot camp. And I'm blanking on his name, the drunk from Arizona there, used to be on the Man Show with Joe Rogan. Doug Stanhope wrote a blog article trashing the whole idea of a boot camp, but he had less than half a sentence trashing, and I don't even think he approached trashing Louis Anderson. And it showed the point of the people who were against teaching. One, he says he's against teaching. Two, then he tells you how instruction happens in comedy.
Which you have to pay your dues and...
Oh, you have to buy drinks for a headliner and ask them questions, which is really convenient, because I love to drink. And I would like it if everybody who wanted advice had to buy me a drink. But then that's not fair, because I remember walking into the boot camp and seeing a comedian who I would not ever spend the time of day talking to. And so they don't have access to buy.
Right. That's why you have straight white men who then teach straight white men who are comfortable being at a bar late at night and not walking home to a car.
Specifically. That's a huge issue.
Yes.
And so I knew that it was the right thing to either take classes or even for someone like Louis to teach them. And then the workshop kind of went this way. Louis would talk for an hour, hour and a half, and I'm learning everything. And then Kyle Cease would talk, and I was at his skill level or above it. So it was just, I would politely listen like any good human. And then back to Louis, and I didn't understand. I know how people were poo-pooing on the price, but to see Louis can be $60 and $80 and $100 to watch him do material he's working on. This is, now you're getting to sit in a room with him and he's talking for an hour and a half as opposed to 50 or 70 minutes. And he's talking 3 and 4 times during that day, 6 times during the 2-day camp. And he's looking at your material and offering you advice. It comes at a price tag. And it's also really good for people to learn from their mentors. So since then, I've been pretty much a pretty good advocate for teaching comedy, and I, have had some internet detractors, take a swing at the bat at me, and I think that's adorable.
Yeah,
because it's like, I had to figure out how to tell gay jokes in New England in '94. Teaching on the internet in 2018, I've got that locked.
I think I can do this.
Dealing with bullies, wow, you better be a really funny bully, because the funniest bullies in comedy are my peers and friends, and not too many of them have lined up to, it's always some junior weight kid going you can't teach this stuff. And it turns out they're actively after information, and they don't want people giving information out to their competitors. And, I like open information. I'm a strange.
You strike me as quite libertarian.
Sure. I've been down that road, but I live in Denver where there are gorgeous parks, and those are built by cities.
I get it.
So I for my politics, I'll often tell people let's just meet in a park and then we can discuss it. Because the person cutting that lawn and the person who's thinking about that lawn, we probably owe them a retirement if they're going to work for us for a long time. So do we owe them an exorbitant retirement? No, but we have to pay that bill, and we can't get mad. And that's where, a lot of Republicans get to. They're like, why do we have to pay for this park and the retirement? And you're like, are you going to come out and cut the lawn, and to the expertise that the lawn requires?
Yeah, indeed.
There's old sculptures that are drawn into the whole plan. There's sidewalks that were pre-thought out, and trees that are making a beautiful tree line that meet the mountains. And you got
this is expertise.
You got to put money into some stuff.
Well, this is related to this idea. I like this. I have this saying is about people will pay for value.
Yeah.
Right. And so whether it be taxes or taking an online comedy class.
Yeah.
So the notion of people criticizing Louis for his boot camp and its costs, that only has to be because they don't see the value in it. But if there are people who find value in it, then the price is right.
Right. If you like the callback closer, that was his signature move on The Tonight Show and in his HBO specials, to begin a routine with a major punchline that he'll get to, and then to close with a different take on that same punchline. He's got an HBO special where he begins with his mom looking at the neighbors and making commentary about them. And then he ends with a UN peace initiative meeting, and his mom being there looking through the curtains making comments about, first it's the poor neighbors next door and they're real poor, and then
the poor countries,
Ethiopia, and at the time they're real poor. And it's that laughter is a classic move that he would constantly do, and I wanted to know more about it. I had used that element in my own stand-up, but then to be with him talking about it and figuring out, how did he know what he was up to when he was doing that? That's high value.
Indeed. I like about that idea, I wasn't familiar with the callback closer as a tactic, but what I like about that is it treats the audience as really smart.
Yes.
I'm a big believer in that idea of, I want to treat my students that they're smart. I want to treat everybody in my life who's listening to me, reading what I'm writing, whatever it is, as smart. I mean, I want to make it easy for them to understand, but I want them to, because I think that's
right.
That's the right approach. And I think good art does that.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And there are times where I try to think of other words other than smart because, you know, in improv, they say like working at the top of your intelligence.
Yes,
so
yes.
I like that. And I like, there's a friend.
Actually, I prefer that too.
Right. You know, I don't want to shy away from why you want to be smart, but then there's also, and not having any fear to go there. Like, and also I like what you're saying about just don't assume that the audience might, like, you don't have to dumb it down for them.
No.
That maybe they're a little smarter than you, or maybe they're a little more aware, or what a millennial might call woke. Like you don't have to tell, I'm 46. You don't got to tell me I'm woke, you know? I've told gay jokes in scarier places than any little snowflake gonna run to, you know? So it's like, you don't worry about me being woke. And I'll just, you know, kind of talk to audiences like they get it. For this weekend, and this over time, this will lose its relevance, but I do a Dirty Christmas show once a year, and it's my most offensive jokes. And can I think about the most offensive topics that have happened this year, and where's the punchline? And so I have a punchline that I tried on a friend. There's several friends. And so I know the joke is solid. It's that good that I'm like, I got to practice this one because I'll only be able to say it one night, one time only. And it involves Jamal Khashoggi. And you either know who that is or you don't. Or after people laugh and you've given the joke some thought, even in a millisecond, you might go, I think he's talking about that guy.
Right.
And so while out of 4 friends, 3 stood up out of their chair, doubled over laughing. 1 went, who is that?
I see.
And it makes me realize I'll need a tagline after to allow the people who, and all 3 steps, the people who get the joke and are getting up and busting a gut.
Yes.
The other people who are taking the context of the moment and going like, everyone is laughing that hard. I can't believe he went there and talked about that guy, but I think it's that guy that he's talking about. And they can laugh then. And then there's going to be a group of the room that's like, I have no idea why everybody's laughing, but clearly they're laughing very hard. So I have missed something. And
they'll ask about it later.
They'll definitely.
That's right.
The word twink, I use that in my act all the time about like I date twinks, and I refuse to explain it to the audience so that they can have that moment in the car ride home having to explain twink to like
that's nice.
Uncle Jerry or whatever. And then they come see me again and we'll meet after the show and I get the story about how
that's great.
They had to explain twink. And I think that's why what my audience likes. That you have to decide for yourself what your audience likes. But for my audience, they love that I don't stop and go like.
For those of you who don't,
yeah. It's like allow that process of context clue to come along. I love figuring out stuff like that. You know, when you don't know what a word means, but you're like, okay, I think.
Yeah, that's funny.
I think it's here.
You might get a kick out of this. I teach. I teach an MBA course in marketing management.
Okay.
And so one of the principles, I think, actually to me, it's the most important part of the class is this notion of what we call segmentation, targeting, and positioning. So thinking about the needs, habits, behaviors, things that you can kind of categorize the marketplace, picking the group of people that you want to serve, right? So you're doing this directly or indirectly with your Comedy 101.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, looking at novice or new comics, you know, they have a certain personality, they're open to instruction, et cetera, et cetera. And then creating what we call a unique position in their mind. So you're the best solution for them, so to speak.
Right. Yeah.
So I use this example of Subaru recognizing they didn't set out to target this group, but recognizing through whatever reason that their cars were super popular with lesbians.
Okay.
And so they wanted to be able to communicate with this group, and they figured out a very clever way to do it that had no effect on the other groups of people they were interested in. So they had ads like, it's not a choice.
Oh, okay.
You know,
right.
And another one was get out and stay out, you know, in a picture of the car, you know, in a mountain setting kind of a thing, which I always thought was really fun because if you're in the know, it's especially clever.
Sure.
And may speak to you.
Right.
And if you're not, you can just take it as face value.
Right.
It was very fun kind of use of language, I thought.
Interesting. You could do that with a coexist bumper sticker. on the back of a Subaru. That's how I knew they were popular with lesbians.
Oh, I see.
This is a lot of new information for me. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
and it's, I do like that sort of wordplay. And it is like you say, allowing certain people in the club. While
again,
you're not
to feel smart.
necessarily telling other people they can't come into the club.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, I love that in a bit of laughter.
I want to hit a few other things here. So the rule of three, do you talk about the rule of three?
Yeah.
Is that also like a technique that you use, that you talk about in terms of trying to develop jokes?
By that point in the semester, that's usually week 6 or 8 in the book. In Helitzer's book, he calls them the triples. He brings up the rule of three, I think, in chapter 3 as well. So it comes up a few times. And the first time I address it, I think I talk more about how there are things that you'll hear have titles like rules. Helitzer, since he's writing a book for academic purpose, he does have an acronym for what threes is.
So do you have an example for the audience of a good rule?
A classic bar joke is usually set up based on the rule of threes. So when a Jew and a Catholic and a gay comedian walk into a bar, then you can begin to know that the bartender is going to interact with the first character mentioned. Yes. So the Jew, then the Catholic, and then the comedian is going to say something that builds or gets the laughter. The first one sets up the idea, the second one builds the anticipation, and the third one delivers the big punchline. Tagging a joke can often be based on the rule of three as well. So a classic joke to do is to reinvent porn titles to, demonstrate your ability to do wordplay.
I see.
So however you change the titles of porn, if you're doing impressions, and this is my impression of so-and-so and so-and-so starring in this movie, that's two pretty well-done premises that people kind of can conceive on their own. And so doing 3 versions of the movie title allows the audience to laugh on the first title, and then on the second one they get to go like, oh, okay, one more time, and then the third one is like, all right, we get it. And hopefully you've maxed out the amount of laughter, and you've probably maxed out the audience's attention span on the little rhetorical technique of using 3 examples.
And I noticed one thing that you use is exaggeration.
Yeah.
You're big. I mean, you sent me a bio. I asked you for a bio. The one I introduced you with, I kind of hacked together from different places.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
But your bio had, I wish I wrote it down here. I don't have it here, but you were like, Chuck Roy is a very funny comedian.
Essentially, yeah. Like no comedian likes their bio. And I'm working on, how to write better bios and funnier for people. But yeah, some of the, like one year I played with I knew that for Google Analytics, top comedian was a popular search. So I just put a period after top, and then it's a top comedian. It's just, you have to be really gay to get, like, gay people call themselves
that's
tops
like
and bottoms.
That's right.
So it was a joke that nobody ever told me was funny, and then a student in class, I showed my demo reel for one class, and he just, the moment it pops up, he's just like top comedian. And
that's the Onion. That's the, like, I've heard stories about like filmmakers who put something in their movie for like one person. Like
it's a great
something so subtle that maybe only Quentin Tarantino watching your movie
when you
might get.
When you are generating tons of laughter in a comedy club and everybody knows they're having a great time, and you tell another joke that only one person in the room is going to get and clearly gets, and if they guffaw, like big, hard, loud laugh coming from the silence, from off stage, from anywhere, the rest of the people know that, like, you weren't quite wrong in assembling the words the way you did. And maybe they were wrong in their assembling the words the way they heard them. Like, they've clearly missed something that somebody else is laughing at. And so to do a joke like top comedian, it was one of those things where it's like, this is going to slide past a lot of people. And There are going to be people like, I had no idea you're gay. And you're just like, well, it was the first word. And I should have had you laughing in the first word.
Yes.
And I didn't even get to the second word of my bio. And I've told you everything about my comedy. And, I wish my bios and such resonated more like that. But again, like, I live in Denver. I'm not trying to be a popular comedian. But,
Let's talk about that for a second. Oh, as an aside, I just want to say sometimes I write things just because I enjoy what I've written.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is a stupid example, but I enjoy it. I was writing an academic paper and I wrote some blah, 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 blah. Nevertheless, the effect persisted.
Okay. Okay. Right. You got to go with what you want.
And I think, like, I don't know if anybody who ever reads that will recognize the connection.
Right.
To the, what is her name? The Senator Warren, Elizabeth Warren.
Right.
The nevertheless, she persisted.
Yeah.
Thing. It's stupid.
But it makes you laugh.
It doesn't even make me laugh. It just made me smile. And so I was like, that's kind of
that stays,
to do.
Yeah. Academic papers. I was just here for an arts entrepreneurship conference, and the titles of the workshops alone were just like so
they're
academic.
So yawn worthy. Yeah, I know.
So the phrase ideation came across, which to me is just like, that's academic for ideas. Like
creating ideas. Yes.
You're just like, well, ideation. And it's just like, no, come on. Like you're not that fancy. But that's, and so I wrote this joke about how they come up with the title for these things by putting all like academic words on dice and just
rolling them out,
boggling them up and going like, okay, it's ideation for academic success.
I get it. I live it a little too much. That joke's a little too close,
right,
for me. So you said, I live in Denver. I'm not trying to be popular.
Sure.
So
I think that is changing. It's not my priority, but I'd like to sell out the room when I play somewhere. So I need to address that skill. I'd like to teach other people why you want to sell tickets. There's other people counting on the revenue as well, from the wait staff to the dishwasher. So while we can, I certainly have walked the line and done the whole thing about being an artist and not, I come from the 90s where it wasn't, especially as an opening act, there was no, you didn't sell tickets. That just wasn't a skill that we were taught, or it was necessary, checked, evaluated. If it had been, I'd be selling tickets. I just, but
it's art and commerce today.
Yeah. It's like the society is
just together.
I remember my first YouTube videos or my first stuff with putting your logo here on it and making artists go like crazy about like, what do you mean putting logos on stuff? And it was just like, well, I toured and I saw logos on posters with my face on it, and I wasn't seeing any of that revenue. And I didn't like that, and I wasn't in control of it. And here's my audience, like having to see the logo of maybe a beer that isn't the one they drink. And, so I was like, how am I going to get the beer I want to set the tone for the evening I want on the poster? And so I began that process of exploring, like, how do we as artists take that on? And quite the battle in 2003. Now it's 2018 and comedy clubs are suddenly like, oh, you got to share us on social media.
Right.
As before they'd be like, don't you dare, that's our revenue. And what are you talking about? And to be able to sell tickets is something I'd like to do. And then the online comedy school, I would like that to be popular because it's effective. Like I want that word of mouth of very satisfied customers. And we were mentioning it a little bit earlier, like trying to hit that price point for the value that they expect in this definitely shifting era of technology. It's no longer putting out a book like Judy Carter did. She's got online classes now as well. And, I'm studying her price points and what is she delivering versus what am I able to deliver. And what you want is for people to get, like, really feel like they got a value off of what they purchased. And you also want them to be like, to look at others who have this similar problem and say, oh no, buy this course, be it for $5 if it's a short targeted course, or $50 or $100 if it's something where I'm taking a lot longer. And giving you information that's going to yield like a return on investment that you're thrilled with.
Yeah, I know. I noticed on your website you sometimes sell individual lessons, like some $5, some $20. So you do these one-off things.
Identifying topics for a set list, $5.
Right.
And is it it cheap?
That's about the same price as a drink.
Yeah, about the price of a drink, about the price of an ebook on the low end. It's not hours of content, and it's very specific. And if you're at that level where you're wondering about how to assemble a set list artistically, you're not making big dollars. So I don't feel comfortable charging you big dollars. I'm not selling you a secret that's going to save a year. I'm really trying to put together a $5 solution. You spend some time on it and absorbing the content. But then really what you have to do is go out there and practice the theory, and hopefully it inspires some comedians to change their set list. I can hit open mics and it's people who are still trying the exact same jokes. They're looking at notes and you're like, what do you mean? I know what the joke is. I've seen you 3 times over 5 years. I don't know your name, but I know like this pedestrian comedy thing you're doing, and you're still looking at a list. Like you can't remember what god-awful thing is next. Like, get it together and then put some art behind picking those topics. And
I have a saying, be a professional.
I want to say stuff like that, but I'm a Modern Drunkard magazine drunk of the month. Like you're going to hear Ralph May laugh from the heavens, like me going like, damn it, be a professional. But to also back up, like there's a day where I walk in to see Ralph, and I'm gonna host the closing show for the night. I've played the one club in the south of the city, and I'm now up to the other show because I knew both the headliners. So they've got me doing the joyfully, moving from club to club. And so as I walk in to the downtown club, Ralph is there, and his opening act, Billy Wayne Davis. This is how I meet him. Is Ralph goes, "Oh Lord, they done effed you up, Billy Wayne." He's cursing at Billy Wayne, going like, "They got Chuck Roy to host. You can't follow him." And he's just doing what comedians do to like ball bust their opening act. That's how it gets taught oftentimes. And my best mentors just crushed my soul and, taught me how to be funnier and demanded excellence. And if I was presented with a challenge, they'd be like, "You're not ready for this. And hurry up. You have 12 minutes to get funnier than the situation." And so Ralph is essentially telling his opening act, you can't follow this guy. This guy's a headliner who secretly lives in Denver, has hidden from the whole industry, and you're about to get annihilated. Hurry up. And so I pick up the context of it as it's happening. And I look at Billy Wayne and I go, "You can't follow me." And it's, like that is the kind of stuff I'm trying to learn how to even put into lessons.
Yeah, I see.
Like I wrote this course called How to Write Halloween Jokes That Kill.
Okay.
It was based on feedback.
It's quite niche.
Right. Somebody reviewed my site and was like, "It's way too academic, way too serious. Like you're not being funny." And the customer, they don't want to know how to write a joke. They want to know how to write a joke that kills.
Yes.
And I was like, that's correct. But then the Bloom's taxonomy kicked in. Like now, how am I going to effectively teach a joke that kills? How do I measure? How does the person measure? How do we prove that they've demonstrated mastery in writing jokes that kill? And so I wrote this little short lecture about Anthony Clark, who used to just crush me when I was his opener. And he delivered this thing that he would call like boom, shake the room. And it was, you could make the laughs just bounce off the comedy club, and they're laughing at your next joke and your next joke and your next joke. And it's just booming laugh after booming laugh after booming laugh. And the jokes have to be clever and funny and like working at the best of your ability, and just more jokes and no cheap jokes, and just even more jokes and more jokes, so that the room is just booming with laughter and it's shaking the room. And I was in my 4th or 5th year getting those lessons, and there are comedians who go 20 years without ever hearing that type of stuff. They won't seek out that kind of mentorship, or they're not in a position to get that kind of mentorship.
Yeah.
And so now I'm
Yeah, they live in the wrong place. They don't know the right
if you
people.
don't live near if Ralph May doesn't think you're funny and ignores you, then you're sitting outside the green room waiting for his show to start, and you just get to watch him and observe. If you're lucky enough to be in the green room or on the show or in the movie, then it's also you've worked enough. You've done you've done the work to have the jokes that crush and the comfortable delivery, and you're bringing the goods. And I'm trying to put that into text that translates to audiences who might not be speaking or reading English when they're getting it. So I'm loving that challenge. And that's, is that to go back to popularity? That's why I would like to hear that comedians in other languages were able to use Google Translate, which I barely understand how it works. And for them to be able to grasp the concept and go, no, you really nailed it, so that I could be learning this, from Finland, or I'm learning this from Asia, and I'm getting the concept of rocking the house.
Boom, shake the room.
Make that boom, shake the room happen.
So I have to tell you this, that when we were talking earlier and this idea of instruction came up, like you just lit up. I mean, as much as you can light up.
Yeah.
I think. I can see you're excited about it, that you feel
it matches everything. I was done with comedy. I did it. I've done it. I know I love it, and I know I'll continue to do it. But the challenges were over versus anything that it just brought on more celebrity or fame, which was nothing I wanted to deal with. And I decided to move here. I fired the local comedy club because they paid like terrible, and they were rude to me on a certain day. So I just went, if you don't think I can walk away from this world, like, you miscalculated.
There's your reversal in your own life.
Yeah. Then I end up within 3 to 6 months, I end up teaching, and it's comedy on a level that only, I think, my best of friends and peers like Ralph could get. Like, they understand that I don't have this desire to be number one on Netflix, but if that were to happen, great. Would I like to maybe figure out how to be number one on Netflix so I can teach a course about it? Yeah. And would it be a private course? Maybe, but the fact that it's for a public university or a community college, the fact that I teach at a community college versus an elite university, I would like to teach at Harvard. I believe I'll teach at Harvard. I'd like to teach at Emerson. I believe I'll teach at Emerson, UCLA, here at Boulder, DU. But the community college of Denver, that is luck and the world rewarding me for, or people like the other teachers who've had the opportunity as well. Like, you're just lucky to be able to be in a classroom demonstrating the art to people and helping them reach their own art and version of the art. And they got to work for it. They got to go back to their job. They have to figure out their student loan, and they have to get a return on investment on it. Like, they want to get into a career, and taking a comedy class may just be part of an academic journey. They want to learn how to think critically and problem solve and make people laugh, but they're not trying to be comedians. They're going to go on to be a poet or an IT programmer, an accountant, or a public speaker. And I love that challenge of, like, having deans and a team above me that holds me accountable to, am I teaching to every student that walks in the room and handling their difficulties, and they're bringing out the best of their abilities.
I see.
So yeah, as far like this is where I needed to be, and in order to, it brings back all those skills that I kind of gave up leaving politics. This is policy. I didn't like politics. I like policy, and so being one of the first, or like one of the people out there influencing comedy education, super great to be able to be in a position where I get to write the stuff. I'm the one who got to make the reverse video. And to get that done, I had to think about the broader audience and the idea that, like, don't lay down rules, lay down suggestions, walk people through the process of them being able to come up with their own rules or guidelines so they can that's how you determine your artistic satisfaction. You figure out how much do you want to have to do with sales or not. If you want nothing to do with sales, then don't worry about selling tickets. But if you want to play theaters that are sold out,
right,
then you might want to get around the skill of selling some tickets.
Yeah, it's tough. I think, like, my thing is, do you want to write a book, or do you want a successful book? And those two things can be different.
Yeah, I was thinking about, like, I'd like to write an OER book for this type of stuff, especially open education resource, the free ones,
right?
So that, especially in arts entrepreneurship, I recognize that is not a new field, but it's emerging, and there aren't a lot of books about it. And there's no need for me to write one for profit when I could probably earn about the same through the school and write one that goes up on open education resources. And then schools from around the globe get to download it, and they don't have to write a book about how to sell tickets artistically at your rock club, poetry show, theater performance, or sell commercials for your podcast, how to artfully market your pottery, whatever the art is. I can totally relate to not wanting to be a sellout, but then, I also understand how sellout is also part of selling.
Well, I have this saying: is it's not selling out, it's cashing in.
Sure,
there is some sense, like, people have mortgages, they have student loan debt, they have,
and I love that.
So some people, it has to be more than a hobby.
Yeah, and it's again, like, in the world of comedy, no matter what you think of your role in the money, if you want your audience to get some chicken fingers and burger or fries during the show, especially if it's a Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, many of them might have just come from work. And so whether you like it or not, if you want an audience that is hangry, then don't get them fed. If you want an audience that is sober, then provide no beer.
Yes.
But if you want some people who are out having a fun time on a Wednesday, acknowledge that there is some food and beverage service going on. And for a waiter or waitress to be there in America under our economic system means they're getting less, they're getting a server's wage. They're working off of tips. So they're counting on a certain amount of people showing up. Whoever plans that has to predict how many waiters or servers they're going to schedule.
Right.
And for someone to get scheduled and then cut, they have to figure out where that money comes from. So if you're going to be so against selling out that you're contributing to the fact that waitresses and waiters get cut, I don't mind to bring up the economics of that and say, like, you're kind of a jerk there.
The tension.
Get your, like, just for some sort of false Jerry Garcia type, like, we don't want to sell tickets, man. Well, the Grateful Dead had, better ticket sales than anybody, and this whole world of commerce following them in the parking lot. So for me, artistically, I've had to realize, like, when I first got into the business, I was just like, selling tickets, no way, man, and then you study and you realize, wait, man, the Dead had things like a hotline you could call to find out where the next show was. I mean, they really, in terms of customer service, they delivered on venue. Where are you going to go see the show? What kind of adventure are you going to have when you get there? Who's the opening act? And how cool is the poster and all that type of stuff? It adds up into the enjoyment of the evening for your audience.
I'm going to ask you two quick questions. It reminds me a little bit about, I watched this documentary about the Ramones.
Okay.
So everybody always thinks about Joey Ramone. Joey's the tall, long hair one.
Right.
But there's another one there. Oh, I can't remember his name. It kills me. I wasn't expecting to talk about this. It's so funny is, like, you think about, they're a punk rock band and they're just so punk rock, all this kind of stuff. But, like, that dude was, like, the brains behind their operation. Yeah. He might not have been, like, the brains behind the music.
Yeah.
But he was the one who made the Ramones the Ramones.
Right.
Like, you often need that.
Yeah.
You can't just have the creative genius. Oftentimes behind the creative genius, there's the boyfriend or the girlfriend or the parent, or, Van Gogh had a brother.
Yeah.
We don't know who Van Gogh is if he didn't have that brother.
Right.
There's a lot of this.
Young Ben Roy is Ben Roy has a #1 album out
I saw that on iTunes.
He got a successful TV show on True TV, Those Who Can't. He was my opening act for a long time, especially during his drinking days. I mean, he's rock star in a bottle. And I used to tease him like, you're like Dane Cook, kid. Because I started with Dane and I witnessed what he did. And Ben was one of those guys conflicted by selling out. And then like now he's a master at selling and entertaining the audience, bringing them on the journey.
You're bringing them, people will pay for value.
His photos from the set of Those Who Can't were so great that they just told you the story and they shared the journey with you. And so like when kids sign up for my class and they're like, and I ask, who are your favorite comedians? And they name people I've worked with. And, they have this vision of the person being like this never going to sell tickets person. I'm like, I know that person. And they do this in order to sell tickets. And they've gone on a journey from not, being rock and roll and tatted and against that type of thing to understanding their role in it and how you got to entertain while you ask people to buy the album or follow up with the thank you. Ben is so good about following up with like, I can't believe I'm #1.
Yeah, I've seen him on Twitter thanking fans and so on.
It's and it's, that was something that conflicted him way early. And for me as his producer, I didn't have the skills to be able to say, well, this is why we do it. I was more in agreement with him going like, why are we trying to sell stuff? But we're doing a crop report and there's a chance to sell commercials in this thing. And I'd like to figure out how to sell commercials so I can pay you.
Yes.
And you have to deal with artists who at that time, he was like, I don't need to be paid. This is just amazing what we're doing. And it's like, well, Ben, I need, like I'd like a mortgage, I'd like insurance. And
I think it's selfish for when fans get upset about this stuff. It's so selfish.
It's always like, or oftentimes it's like, I don't want my little secret artist to become famous or whatever. And it's like, well, I don't know what you want, but Red Rocks is 8,000 seats and they got to sell. Yes. And if you're mad at Nathaniel Rateliff for going from bar rooms to selling that for 2 nights.
You should be celebrating his
You should be so
genius.
Happy for him.
Right.
He's got a band that they travel to Europe. And while it sounds terrific, he's mentioned, if I can figure it out, how can he come into the class and talk about like his responsibility in making sure those checks are good for the band when they play Europe and such. And that's, there is that element of the art where people are like, oh, I don't want my band to be, there. And it's like, well, if you want them to be available to you at your corner bar in Denver, then please understand, since I moved here, rent was $300. It is now $1,300. Cost of living was 30-something thousand when I first got here. It is now 50 to 60,000. And like your band's got to figure it out. Barista jobs don't pay for that. Like they got to be able to sell tickets, and you got to have a role in wanting to pay for that. So it does show up at your corner bar. And while that doesn't have to be an exorbitant fee, we can't achieve it if we poo-poo it and make it impossible for them to sell those tickets, and that goes specifically to the poetry audience out there. Poets don't charge anything, and that's why poetry shows are lousy.
I've
nobody goes to a poetry show and was like, this was banging, like and acting and theater and such. It's like a badge of honor to work for free for so long, and it got to rethink that. Like the world really has to think about how can my local actor starring in one show, 5 shows, but the same play for a month at a theater, how does that convert into their world of being able to save for retirement? Otherwise, we got to buy them food when they're 90. That's right.
So as a side, I've had Summer Browning, she's a poet down in Denver. She's opened a poetry show in her garage.
Oh, that's killer.
Which you might enjoy.
Nice.
But okay, 2 last questions, quick questions. How'd you end up teaching comedy
I
at the community college?
Was a guest speaker often when Chris Voth had the class.
Okay.
He went on to get his doctorate and would no longer have time to teach the class. So suggested me. I know that they went for some other comedians as well. And
I'm glad they failed.
Yeah, I'm certainly glad as well. Although I'm not. It's a city property, so I'm not a hog. Like, we're looking at building a certificate, which means more courses. And if there are other people who should be teaching those classes, then I need to do the hustle to get those people to teach those courses. I do think I've got the certain set of skills and that broad range of thinking. I don't think the other people they were looking at would be considering, students in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. I also don't think those people don't have those skills. Like, if I were to go to any of the two other people I know of that they were looking at for the job, they would have a lot of answers for me on, like, what do we do about Nigeria? But I think they'd also be like, Bear, I'm already yawning. Like, you go research that and tell us what you think, and we'll back you. It was I don't have a master's degree, so I'm back in school trying to get a degree while I continue to teach and develop the certificate. So they had to have a little presidential exception.
Okay.
And at the top of my resume, it actually said flunked out of college.
Actually, if there's any place you should be able to get the exception,
it would be the Community College of Denver.
Well, I was going to say it would be for a comedy class.
Yeah, and others have said, like, at conferences, there were instructional design. I went to an instructional design conference, and this one lady, in an attempt to comfort me, they were saying I could call myself professor, even though I'm an adjunct. And then they're trying to solve, like, how do I upsell this thing that I don't have a degree?
You turn it into you take the bug and you make it a feature.
She called it she goes, what you have is terminal degree in your field, which just made me, like, laugh in the saddest way, because that's how academics are. They're like, oh, are you a part-time professor? We can't say that. How about adjunct faculty member? That will market itself to nobody.
Yes,
like, nobody will buy a class because you're an adjunct faculty member. Right. So, and we can't call you professor because we're elitist, and there's got to be a hierarchy. And then to solve, like, how come you can't, what it means is there's no degree in comedy, not even an associate's out there. So my life experience gives me the maximum degree you can get. But in an academic world, we can't say maximum degree in my field. We have
terminal,
to say terminal.
That's right.
And so it sounds like I have a disease and that we're going to have to do benefits for terminal degree.
I don't know if anyone else will enjoy that as much as I do.
I hope so. And I hope to others who laughed, like, please get that. Like, if I had a production crew, we'd have had the commercial already. Like, just my department chair, Dr. Nick, who's a funny actor, and to have him in a medical suit just talking about how I have terminal degree in my field.
That's right. Well, congratulations for that. I've really enjoyed chatting with you about this stuff. Last question. One or two things that you're reading, watching, or listening to that stand out to you as, like, extremely good?
I think Judy Carter's webinars for public speaking are great. She's shifting her focus from teaching comedy to teaching public speaking.
Okay.
And one of her marketing methods is to offer these free webinars that really solve a problem. So that you're attracted by the title that clearly says she's going to solve some sort of problem within this webinar. And she doesn't have this academic background at all. So
I have her book over there too.
Right.
Yes.
So I think she understands her role in teaching, and that she wrote one of the most popular books out there, The Comedy Bible. What you learn quickly is that she quit comedy and then wrote the book. And I think that was what stopped me from buying her book when I was a kid, is I was like, I want to learn from somebody who's really doing it. And then, but her stuff about public speaking is really targeted, and like, she's taking advantage of the technology out there by having these little free webinars.
I see.
As far as reading, nothing that comes to mind. The last fun book I read was called Small Teaching. I think I read that over the summer or last summer. It was a good book about how to take topics and break your classroom up into small activities and small events. And it turns out I used a lot of those techniques just naturally. And it was nice to have, he would sort of back an idea by the academic evidence and then demonstrate real activities that you could apply for your classroom right there. And so I like that. Sitting on my desk is Adam Caton Holland's book.
Oh, yes.
And I got a
Tragedy Plus Time.
Yeah, and I haven't had a minute to read it. And
it's getting great reviews.
Yeah, I know Professor Sinclair at the community college dog-eared the page where I mentioned. He tells a brilliant or a great story about when he was a new comedian and I had just moved here, and we would all play the Squire Lounge open mic and compete over this $25 bar tab. And it was vicious competition. I would not do any joke older than 3 weeks. Unfair of me to do my headlining material up against a bunch of rookies competing. And then they would use the best of their material plus whatever new stuff. And every Tuesday, you're just fighting for this bar tab. You could, in fact, you bring your bar tab back to drink, and you could drink all night, and they would take $3 or $1.50 off the tab. So a $25 bar tab could spend for a year at the Squire.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about how much pay or booze you could get. It was about winning on that night, having the set, the joke, the piece of comedy that stood out versus Adam or Ben Roy, Andrew Orvidal, where Josh Blue could be in the room. Lewis Johnson, like one of the original Denver comedians, could stop in, or Aaron Gabbo, who's a kid who was a brain scientist that quit because he was going to make more money and he had to devote all of his time to brain study in order to pursue his other passion. And so his comedy was just super brilliant. And so you're trying to crush, and in a wild bar room on Colfax Avenue. So at some point I'll read the whole book and get the whole story. But yeah, right now it's, I'm in 4 classes: calculus, business stats.
You're reading plenty of other books that don't stand out.
Yeah, I'm really taking a business calculus class, and there are times where I look at the professor going I'm not doing. I strategically chose not to do certain assignments because it's I don't need any more lessons in the process that calculus is hard, and some things take a long time. And so a 0 will let me answer a lead about a corporate gig, which is going to pay the bills. So, some days it's
it's trade-offs.
Good luck, calculus. I gotta pay bills. So. Well, I've talked a lot.
No, that's what. This is what podcasts are for. So
I'm super fun.
I'm so thankful that you came up here to do this.
I'm really glad you asked me. I'm glad we're connected. This is phenomenal. So hello to your fine audience, and thanks for listening. And I hope we get to meet at some point. Bear hugs when we do.
Outstanding. Thanks, Chuck.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to visit petermcgraw.org for more information about our guest, show notes, and social media links. If you've enjoyed this episode,